Kuntres Umaayan Maamer. Today we're going to pick up from where we left off, that we just finished off talking about how everything's ultimate purpose is to get to a level higher than it. So for a mineral, the greatest thing it could do is become absorbed in a plant. A plant could be absorbed in an animal in a person in spirituality. That's not what we talked about. We're talking about that today. I jumped the gun. Yeah? Okay. Kuntres Umaayan, we're up to Perek. So what were we talking about yesterday? That you have some people that lower themselves and some people that act like a person. So someone who's lowering themselves is involved in running after sensory desires like food and things like that. Someone who's lowering themselves a bit less is running after music or emotions for the sake of emotions. And a person is a mensch. A person is a person like a person is supposed to be, is doing their emotions. Why? Because that's what seichel, understanding, dictates. So when you're running your emotions based on your understanding, that's how a person's supposed to be. Now we're going to have even higher level than a person. You ready for this? Perek. Higher than all the pleasures that we mentioned yesterday. The pleasure in being invested in your emotions, the pleasure of music, or the pleasure of food. What's the highest? The pleasure just in intellect and understanding. So when do you have pleasure in that? For example, let's say for someone who comes up with some new idea, some new intellectual idea. Chadosha, a new one no one's ever heard about. Sheyesh bo tainug nifla. It's incredibly enjoyable. The guy's like, wow, I figured it out. You know, eureka. You ever heard the phrase eureka? It's when someone figured something out. It's like you come up with a chiddush. You're sitting in Zal and you're learning, and then you realize a new understanding of the Gemara. It's so incredibly amazing. So similarly, when you understand, because when you learn something, you understand it very well. That is so much enjoyment in this when you really understand something well. So this is the highest level of pleasure within a person's physical capacity. This is the highest good, the highest pleasure that a person can attain. So there's one condition to this. Intellect, coming up with new ideas, is the highest that a person can attain in pleasure. Because a person is, by definition, intellectual. That's what makes a person better than an animal in the most physical sense. So that person can think. An animal can't. An animal can also run after good food or could enjoy good music to a certain extent. Some animals understand music very well. And some animals express kindness, like we spoke about people who have a service dog, that expresses kindness and feelings very well. But intellect, that's the human. That's the highest on the food chain of pleasures. Yeah, the pleasure chain. There's one condition. You know when it's bad to come up with new ideas? But condition is that this wisdom that you're thinking up, it's a good one and it's a true one. Because if it's a bad idea, for example, a false idea or a evil idea, then it's one of the forbidden things you can't get involved in. So if you're thinking up a new understanding of your Gemara, that's awesome. If you think up a fake understanding of Gemara, that's no good. Or even worse, if someone's coming up with bad ideas. There are a lot of people who came up with new ideas in the world. There were some very, very, very bad ideas. There's some Russian guy who thought up, you know what, we should put like half the country in the gulag. It was definitely an interesting idea, but not a good one. Definitely not a good one. So you only get to the heights of human ability to attain pleasure when it's a good idea, a positive idea, and a true idea. For Adam and the person, Now, seeing as a person is the most chosen of all creations. His goodness and his pleasure has to be specifically in spiritual things. Specifically in regards to wisdom. And specifically in this, he should have the pleasure of his soul. This is what makes him better than any other creation. But nefesh maskelis, because the seichel that was given to him and the wisdom that was given to him is more something that all animals don't have, And his animal soul is also called a thinking soul. You ever heard of the Nefesh Meskel? It's a bit complicated what's what, but within every person, on a very physical level, their psyche is a thinking psyche. A person thinks, a person understands. That's what makes him a person. So if you're involved in running after donuts, there's nothing that makes you better than a cow that likes to eat donuts. I know cows don't really eat donuts. Ants eat donuts, right?
Ants, flies.
Flies also eat donuts. But if you're attaining wisdom, that makes you much better than an animal. No animal can do that. Now, when the Rebbe Rashab said here that a person should run after spiritual things, I think he's saying this spiritual within the person. At the moment, we haven't yet got to the level of, we're about to upgrade, but we're about to move on to a person getting above their physical psyche and attaching to Hashem. That's the spiritual. At the moment, Ruchni would mean more, spiritual would mean that more refined and more untangible than something very, very sensory. So with your senses, you can hear music, which is a bit higher than the sense of tasting food, or you can feel a soft blanket that's very enjoyable. But then you get above and beyond that, and you get to emotions, and how much more so intellect. That's a bit more on the spiritual side of a person. Your emotions, you can't. Your emotions and your intellect, you can't exactly put in a jar and display it in the British Museum, can you? A donut, you can. You put a donut in a time capsule. And I saw a video of this guy who took a burger and he covered it with resin and it hardened, and he buried it in his backyard so that people in a million years will know that he had a burger. Isn't that sweet of him? But you can't do that with emotions or with understanding.
Those people can make millions of dollars.
Exactly. Such unbelievable clickbait. So, what's the thing? That's something very tangible you could do that with. Something that's a little bit more spiritual. It's spiritual because it's untangible. Even though it's not yet on the godly level unless you use it for Torah mitzvahs. So, with Frat, specifically, now we're going to upgrade. You ready? Until now, we were talking about that a person has an intellectual soul. That wasn't make you better than an animal. Now we're going to upgrade and look deeper from the Jewish soul. Specifically from the perspective of the godly soul in the person. That the godly soul comes from Hashem's Chachma. It speaks about in Tanya that the Nefesh Elokis, the godly soul, comes straight from Hashem's Chachma. Now, Chachma would mean in regards to the spheres of Atzilus, and Chachma would be the most refined point of Elikus coming into our world. And from there comes the neshama. So even the source of your neshama is from a place within Seichel of Hashem. Now, but historically is a person has to be kol amshachas nafshay. Everything his soul's drawn after, and everything that he's looking for and he really wants, but Esek Chachma was a Torah in regards to understanding the wisdom of Torah. And in regards to this, he should have the pleasure of his soul. And for this, his neshama should go up one level after another, and that's the purpose he's created for. So, with this, you upgrade your neshama. This is the ultimate purpose. A person comes from Hashem's Chachma. Torah also comes from Hashem's Chachma. This is the ultimate of who you are. You're someone who can attach to Hashem's Chachma. You are from Hashem's Chachma. This is your real identity. Learning Torah is what a person is. It's not something you're going out of your way to do. This is the real you. Everything else is just a distraction. It's just a side hustle. Everything else. Your main thing going on in life is learning Torah. Everything else is a side hustle. Now we're going to get into discussion of what is the ultimate achievement of every existing thing. And before we get into this, we have to talk about the four types of things. We're not going to remember what four types of life forces there are. Lowest is doimim, which is the mineral world, like rocks and salt. Next one is what?
Plants.
Exactly. So me'ach is plants, growing things. Next one?
Chaya.
Chai is animals. And last is?
Adam.
Medaber, people, perfect. So now that we've figured out the four types of existences, let's see how each of these creations can upgrade, can level up, can get to the bonus. Today, called everything created in the world, is for an ultimate purpose. Tachlis called Dover, you know what the ultimate of every single thing is? Oh, when it gets higher than its own level. For example, the ultimate of a growing thing like a plant. Give me an example of a plant.
Tree.
A tree, beautiful. When it's included in a living thing, in an animal. So, what eats trees? Woodpeckers, beavers? They don't exactly eat them. They use them.
The nuts.
But the leaves are beautiful. A koala eats the leaves. Now the leaves have become part of the koala, and they've upgraded. It used to be the molecules in this, and the nutrients in this leaf used to be part of Semeach. It used to be plant, and now it's part of the animal kingdom. The Tackle what's the ultimate of a animal to be included in a person? So people use animals for all sorts of things to further their human quest for, we're about to find out what the human quest is. And that's the ultimate of an animal. It can go up from being animal level to being human level. Tackle and the ultimate of a speaking person of the human who when his spirit goes up above, it's included in the spirituality. So out of that 4 levels of existing things, mineral, plants, animals, and humans, it sounds like humans are top of the food chain. But that's just within physical creations. Above humans is the spirit, is ruchnius, spirituality. A person can go up and connect to spirituality. That's how he upgrades. So how are we going to go about this? How are we going to upgrade to spirituality? Are we going to stand on a mountaintop and look at the setting sun and no, that's not, that's just maybe that goes into our discussion yesterday of things that make people feel good. But you ready for how? Let's say someone's involved in learning Torah. That's Hashem's wisdom and Hashem's will. And the Torah and Hashem are all one. So when you have Torah inside of you, now you have Hashem inside of you. And all of a sudden, you've just lifted yourself up to Hashem level to a certain extent. So when someone's involved in learning Torah, Ma'ayin and he examines it very well, to understand everything to the true conclusion, he becomes one with Hashem's wisdom and will in an ultimate, incredible unity. Like it says in Tanya Perek. What does it say in Tanya Perek? Let's visit that very quickly. We're not going to pull out the Tanya right now. But it speaks about that when you connect with something else, there's very many ways of becoming connected with something. And some things you connect with more and some things less. So, for example, a friend, you have a relationship with your friend, and therefore you're connected that you are you and he is he. You're two separate things, and you have a certain bond, a friendship. Then, let's say, example of food, that you consume food and the nutrients become part of you. So you become one with the food, but only from the perspective that the food became one with you. You didn't become one with the food. You are the lasting thing, and the food is long gone into the greater existence of yourself. Now let's talk about learning Torah. And here's something a bit mind-blowing. We're just going to spend 1 minute on it. I'm sure you're going to get it super fast. That when you learn Torah, both you become included, captivated by Hashem, and Hashem is included in you. That when you understand the concept, let's do the in you one. When you sit down and learn this Maamer, and you understand it well, or a Gemara is a better example, when you understand the piece of Gemara well, you have the information in your head, right? So now, that information, that Torah, that part of Elikus, is part of you. You have it, just like food. You digested it mentally. It's in you. You have it. But at the same time, your mind is captivated by understanding this Torah, and this Torah is Hashem's Torah, so it's infinite. You're never going to get the full picture. So to a certain extent, it's in you. But also, you're in it. You're swimming in this infinite knowledge that's something captivating your mind, and that you're never going to plumb all the depths of. There's always more to understand. So you're captivated by it, and it's captivated in you. So you have it, and it has you all at once. It's like having 2 balloons. You ever blown up a balloon? Just one's inside the other?
No.
No? Okay. So if you blow up put two balloons inside each other and you blow them both up, it looks pretty cool. So imagine Torah's on the inside and you're around it, but at the same time, it's around you and you're on the inside. Now that's something that you can't do physically. That's something that only applies with learning Torah. Now we're going to move on. If we got it, we got it. If not, not. Come to the Tanya Shir for more details. But then with this, Tis'ala Nafsha, his soul will go up. Shemis Kasheris. It's connected with Nechlelis. And it's included with Chachmosi's Perek and Hashem's wisdom. Hain be'esek and Nigla with the Torah. Both regarding Nigla, learning the revealed parts of Torah. So when you see a sentence like this, it's going to say both this and this. But first, we're going to say sometimes we kind of have like a digression to discuss the first one before the second one. So we're going to say both with the revealed parts of Torah, and then we're going to talk about that for a moment, and then we're going to say about the hidden parts. You ready? So both with the revealed parts of Torah, for example, Gemara and Mishnah, that Shehi Mahus Chachmas Yirtzein Sparach. That is the actual, you have the thing of Hashem's Chachma and Ratzin. That we're going to talk about the difference between Mahus and Metzias. And Mahus is when you have it. Metzias is when you know of its existence. And each one has a different Maila over each other. So let's say you sit down and learn a Gemara. And Gemara is Hashem's wisdom. So you can walk away and get 100 in your test and really understand the Gemara properly, right? Could you understand the Gemara properly?
Yeah.
Yeah, awesome. So that then you actually have it. This is what Hashem's wisdom obligated. That what? You figure out the halacha in the Gemara. Is that kosher? Is that apostle? If you meat like this is kosher. If you mix it with some milk, it's going to be no good. It's going to be apostle over here. So if you knock off the top of the esrog, it's going to be no good. Now the Rebbe says something very important. This isn't only in the Bible, not only when learning Chumash, but also any additional information in Torah, whether it's in Mishnah or in Gemara, or in your notebook if you came up with something real, that everything that the sharp Talmud comes, and everything that sharp student comes to teach. They're like, hey, we came up with a new idea. It was already taught to Moshe at Har Sinai. The pathway in Torah already existed. You just rediscovered it. Some people, they go somewhere. Some people go to find the ancient ruins, and they think they discovered something new. They're going through the jungle. There's a big difference between blazing your own path and finding an already trodden path that you're rediscovering. So Hashem taught everything to Moshe at Har Sinai. Now, some things were forgotten over the generations, and some people who are put in a lot of effort when learning Torah, or as the Rebbe teaches us that everyone could do this because everyone has their part of the Torah. They can, through using a correct analysis, through the different ways that we analyze Torah, can rediscover this path that was already taught to Moshe. If it was already taught to Moshe at Har Sinai, it means it's a real connection to Hashem. It's not just your funny ideas. It's a real connection to Hashem. So when you sit down to learn Gemara, you now have a real connection to Hashem. So what are all these new ideas that were already revealed to Moshe? It's all the halachos in the Torah Shebal Peh. V'tameim and their reasons. V'asvaros and the logics behind them. It all literally comes from Hashem's wisdom. When a person is involved in them, he becomes one and is included in this, like we spoke before about the Tanya. So that's in regards to learning Nigla. Learning Nigla, you actually understand it. I remember I was speaking to a Bacher once, and he said he likes learning Nigla, not Chassidus. I'm like, why? He's like, Nigla actually makes sense. Now, I think it's a bit of a egocentric thing to say that he is, after like thousands of great tzaddikim, wrote many books of Nigla, many books of the hidden parts of Torah, he came and decided what makes sense and what doesn't. But his emotion, his frustration is real. And this is frustration, that when you learn Nigla, it's coming from such a logical place that even without anything spiritual, even if you never heard of Hashem, you can analyze it. This is something you can go to Manhattan, you can sit down with a businessman, and you can analyze a piece of Gemara, and the guy, maybe he won't know all the regular tools of learning Torah, but he'll be able to 100% follow the discussion because it's all based on logic and reasoning. We're going to analyze this pasuk, we'll analyze this Mishnah, we'll say, if you'd say that, how could I say this? It's something, that's why you have the mahus, you have the actual thing. You understand it. As opposed to Chassidus, when he said it doesn't make sense, obviously, it's a bit of a silly thing to say, but I think what he's trying to express is that in Chassidus, it's telling you how it is. It's not a logic. You can't say, well, I guess this because that. No, it's telling you how it is. Like one time I was by a shiur of Ziyid, Rabbi Glick in Australia. It's a Yid who knows a lot of Chassidus. So I was by a shiur and he started the Maamer V'yadait Moskva. So that's a very deep Maamer, right? And it's kind of a beginner Maamer because it's such an important Maamer, but it's not especially an easy Maamer. So he read the first line, the first line it quotes a pasuk. It's like V'yadaita Yom Shoyis Alvecha. So the first line doesn't say anything. It's just quoting a verse. We haven't even discussed what it means. So there's one bacher in the shiur is like, I don't understand what the problem is. It's very clear. Like it says, you should know today that Hashem is the Elokim and there's no other. Okay, I get it. I get the whole Maamer. Why do we need the Maamer? I understand the pasuk. It's a very interesting question, but I remember his reaction. He was like trying to hold himself in because he didn't know what to do with himself. It's such a question. Seriously, man. You read the title of the book and you're like, okay, now I get the book. Imagine you read a book, Good Parenting, and you're like, okay, good parenting. I'll be a good parent. What do I need the rest of the book for? It was a very, very silly question, but his answer was very interesting. It's you understand when you learn Nigla, you learn the reveal parts of Torah, you could say, I came up with a novel idea no one's ever thought about before. I have a new approach to figuring this out. But when you learn Chassidus, you can't really do that because Chassidus is talking about Elikus. Chassidus is talking about spirituality, things that we have no real perception of unless you're a great tzaddik who actually sees this. And someone like a Rebbe who's a great tzaddik is kind enough to reveal to us the spiritual things he sees and knows and really understands. For us, we're trying to work around, we're trying to understand it in general. It's like our last Maamer, remember we learned the difference between seeing and hearing? So learning Nigla could be a bit it's learning Nigla, you really get it. It's okay, what happens if someone has a cow walking down the street and it knocks into someone's shop and breaks a window? So who has to pay? Well, I know what a cow looks like, I know what a shop looks like, I've seen a few broken windows, and I can understand that the guy's got to run his business, someone's got to pay for the damage. So we'll figure it out, yeah? As opposed to Chassidus, if you say, okay, so Chochmah is Nimshach into Malchus, well, I've never seen Chochmah, I've never seen Malchus, so I've got to take your word for it. Obviously, there is, to a certain extent, understanding in Chassidus, and the Rebbe says that everyone can actually be Mechadish, new understanding in Chassidus itself. So, to a certain extent, you could do that also in Chassidus. But that's why we're talking about a Nigla, you have it, you understand it, you got all the details. As opposed to Chassidus, it's Ideas and Metzias. Let's see what's going to be with Chassidus. Let's explain what Ideas and Metzias is in 1 second. Ve'hein, and also continuing off when we said both with learning revealed parts of Torah. Ve'hein also basic Pnimius of Torah. When you learn the hidden parts of Torah, the inner parts of Torah, she Ideas Vasogis Leikus. With this, you're getting to know godliness. You're knowing Elikus. You're not understanding about a cow breaking someone's window. You're understanding about Hashem creating the world. Shema Shigili Lodon Zal, that our Rebbes were kind enough to reveal to us. In this field, what they revealed to us in this field is the inner wisdom of Hashem. And when you're involved in this, Harehu Miskasher, he's connected with the inner wisdom of Hashem. It's way above the outer wisdom. So let's talk about first Yidis Metzias and Mahus, and then we'll get into inner and outer. So Metzias is I know of the thing. So Chassidus, you're closer to the essence. You have the inner part. You have the essence, but you can't really understand essence. You can't understand essence. Essence doesn't have a color, doesn't have details to the same extent. We're not in that realm to be able to understand it. With a cow and a window, I can fully understand that. So I have the mahus, I have the very thing. Suppose the Chassidus, the Metzias, I can just kind of work my way around it. And I'm going to have to try my best based on what the Rebbe revealed to us. So that's the Mila of Nigla. That's a big Mila of Nigla that when you learn it, you can fully understand all the details. You can work around it. You can approach it logically. As opposed to Chassidus, obviously, the whole Chiddush of Chassidus Chabad is that you can approach it logically, but not to the same extent. Because you don't know what Chochmah looks like. You know what I'm saying? It's not in the physical realm. But then there's a big Mila of Chassidus. That's the Pnimius, the inner. And Nigla is the outside, the Chitzonius. What does that mean? It's all part of Hashem's Chochmah. It's all one Torah. But just like a person, you have one person who has a body and a soul. And they're both vitally important. And one without the other can't live. But the body is just the outside of him. The soul is the inside, the deeper part. Like, for example, you could ask someone, hey, did you notice that Yossi, you notice anything different with how Yossi's been lately? So the person can give a very deep or a very superficial answer. A superficial answer is like, yeah, he's been sleeping in lately. So that's superficial. You know why? It's outer. Because he's just commenting on the guy's action. Nothing on the inside. Yeah, he's been sleeping in lately. Then he can give a deeper meaning. He can say, yeah, I think he's depressed. That's something a lot deeper. There, we're looking at his emotions. We're looking on the inside. They're both true, and they're both about Yossi, but one's on the inside, one's on the outside. Same thing with Torah. They can have a cow, whether you have a goring bull. That goes around, you have a bull in your farm, and it goes and gores someone's cow. That's the outer parts of Torah. That's like the body of Torah. It's 100% Torah, 100,000%, but it's the outside. As opposed to Chassidus, or Torah, Kabbalah is going to tell you about Hashem and your relationship with Him. That's the inner meaning of the Torah. That's the depth. That's the feeling behind it. That's the ultimate. So one of them, when you learn Nigla, you understand it in a more practical way. When you learn Chassidus, you have the inner dimension of Hashem. So one's better for getting closer to Hashem. One's better for affecting you more. So I think the best approach is to learn both. So, now, there's another advantage, Nesefes, more than this, and understanding Pnimius Torah. In what? But also benefit, in how it affects you. So until now, we learned, hey, you want to really affect yourself, change your life, be more of a mensch, you should learn Nigla. If you want to have Hashem in more of an abstract way, you should learn Chassidus. There's actually something that Chassidus does, very important, with regards to how it affects you. Even though here you're only learning Metzias, you're working around, trying to understand Hashem, but not really getting it. Nevertheless, at least you understand Metzias or Rufnius. At least you understand this spiritual Metzias. That you kind of feel it and you're connected to it. So even though we don't know what spirituality looks like or tastes like, we can't sense it. Obviously, it doesn't have a look or taste. That's why. But nevertheless, you have some sort of understanding from learning Chassidus. You have the best understanding you could. You get 100% on a test on this Maamer. We still won't know exactly what the soul looks like we know what a cow looks like. But you have some form of understanding. And when you do, now you're attaching your mind, you're attaching your soul to Ruchnius, to the deepest parts of the Torah. Through this, you go out of your physical day-to-day life, of all the you come to a more spiritual level of living. So, dakus in English is like demure. It's less crass and more refined. You ever heard demure? The world in general discovered Adel. They call it demure. It's like since someone's like not so flashy and outgoing and just wears like regular clothing, they're a bit toned down. It's like, wow, that's classy. It like took the world how many years to figure out that being Adel is better than being grub. Being demure is better than being crass. Finally. So, now, and also with his nefesh itself, and also with all your different things in life, and all the details that you get involved in your life. Everything's going to be done in a more refined and spiritual way. Built in without really feeling all about yourself. without ego. When someone's all involved in their own understanding, they end up, everything's about them. But when someone's involved in Hashem, you're thinking about the objective, you're thinking about Hashem the whole day. Now, your whole life is going to be less about you and less crass and more just about Hashem. So, like we're going to say in Yiddish, very beautiful golden words there. As itliche Zach, it's going to be every single thing that he does, both in regards to learning Torah and doing mitzvahs, and their offshoots and all the details of Torah mitzvahs. For example, you got to go to, when you're going to shul, instead, not only when you're in shul, it's just edel. Everything's done in a refined way. Nit grob, not in a crass way, be'etzem. Or nit murgosh, and not in a way that it's all about yourself, that you feel, oh, this me. On blitzers, without showing off, and on hachzokes Torah and without holding it that, oh, I'm the best for doing this. How much more so? Nit nicker zayin. It won't be recognizable by the anderen for the other guy that you're a show-off. So, firstly, you won't feel like a show-off. Number two, you won't act like a show-off. And obviously, now, if you're doing things because it's right and not because it feels good for you, you're for sure going to go and help others. When you're on the move on, and in physical terms, it's understood. How much more so? You're going to leave your physicality. You're not going to start running after physical desires. At all. And you're not going to want them. Rather, your whole want is going to be for spiritual matters, for alikus, for godliness. So, extra advantage of learning Chassidus, it makes you feel a bit more spiritual and refined, and that really has a massive effect in your life. Let's say quickly, because we've got to wrap up, the kitzur, the summary. The person, shulbal nefesh, who has a soul, muskelis, that thinks, very kiss, and a godly soul, you should have your pleasure, but in the wisdom of Torah. And Tachlis Kol Nivra, the ultimate of every creation, is to get up higher than it, by day limit to learn the revealed parts of Torah. You become one with Hashem's wisdom and will. By day Chassidus, but through learning Chassidus, you get connected to the deeper inner dimension of Torah. When they're very edel b'chol you become refined in all your things. Thanks so much for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe and send this over to your friends as well.